Hello, my name is Anna Kalczyńska and you're watching World News on TVP World. In a post on social media, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he had a productive conversation with his American counterpart, Donald Trump, about the current state of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Apart from Moscow's intensified attacks on Ukrainian cities, the two leaders also discussed sanctions on Russia, namely Washington's pledge to introduce tariffs on countries that buy oil from Moscow. The topic of European countries purchasing American weapons for Ukraine was also discussed by the pair, a prospect that will see countries like the Netherlands, Sweden, Norway and Denmark spend over $1 billion on American weapons for Kyiv. Zelensky and Trump also talked about a bilateral defense deal regarding military drones, with the former saying, quote, "The draft agreement on drones has already been prepared by the Ukrainian side," end of quote, calling it possibly one of the strongest between Kyiv and Washington so far. And Ukraine says it has found components from India in Russian drones used in attacks on its soil, as Washington steps up pressure on New Delhi over its trade links with Moscow.
Kyiv's presidential chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, said that the parts were recovered from drones targeting Ukrainian frontline positions and civilians. The claim follows US accusations that India is indirectly financing Russia's war by purchasing large volumes of Russian oil. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller said India now rivals China as a top buyer of Moscow's crude. Washington has imposed a 25% tariff on Indian goods and threatened 100% tariff unless Moscow reaches a peace deal. New Delhi has indicated it will continue buying Russian oil despite US warnings.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has invited his Turkish counterpart, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, for an official visit to Ukraine. This comes as US President Donald Trump increases his diplomatic push for peace in Moscow's war against Kyiv.
Erdogan last travelled to Ukraine in August 2022 for talks in Lviv, having met Zelensky in Kyiv just weeks before the full-scale invasion. The renewed invitation is expected to address Ankara's ongoing mediation efforts and US President Donald Trump's threat to get tough with Russia if it doesn't agree to a ceasefire this week. Experts say the push for peace is gathering momentum.
All of this point to some possibility which is on the table. Also, we know that the deadline which was established by President Trump, he said August 8. So this deadline is approaching in several days. And he said that after this, there will be secondary sanctions against countries buying Russian oil, and there will be more pressure on Russia. Also, we know that he's an envoy, special envoy, Stephen Witkoff. He is invited to Moscow and maybe will visit Moscow this week. So, yeah, we clearly see that there is a big diplomatic move right now on different tracks. It's connected with change of President Trump's attitude to the war.
Erdogan has said Turkey is ready to host peace negotiations, potentially involving Zelensky, Russia's Vladimir Putin and Trump. Turkey remains one of the few nations maintaining open dialogue with both Kyiv and Moscow, having previously facilitated peace talks in 2022.
In Ukraine, 10 civilians are dead and 17 more have been injured after Russian ballistic missiles hit Ukraine's Kharkiv region overnight on Tuesday. Regional authorities and Ukraine's Air Force reported that Russian forces launched an Iskander-M ballistic missile and 46 Shahid-type drones against Ukraine overnight. According to Kyiv Independent, Ukraine's air defense and electronic warfare intercepted 29 drones, while Iskander missile and another 17 drones reached their targets. The heavily hit Kharkiv region, and especially the town of Lozova, suffered the biggest damage. The Russian attack damaged railway infrastructure and started fires at the station and on depot building roofs, killing a mechanic. Lozova Mayor Serhiy Zelensky called it the heaviest attack against the town since the start of the full-scale invasion. Humanitarian airdrops of food into Gaza continue amid mounting pressure on Israel to permit more aid to reach the local population. UN agencies stress that the airdrops are still woefully insufficient. For the past week, countries including Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, France and the United Kingdom have been carrying out humanitarian aid airdrops over the Gaza Strip. Humanitarian agencies are warning that the territory's 2.4 million people are on the brink of a catastrophic famine. After 22 months of combat, 175 people are reported to have died of hunger, more than half of whom were children. UN agencies are calling for Israel to allow significantly more aid into the territory by land and increase access to the Gaza Strip. Latvian President Edgars Rinkēvičs reaffirmed his country's position against unilaterally recognizing a Palestinian state, saying such a move would not constructively contribute to resolving the conflict. The leader spoke along Israeli President Isaac Herzog, who visited Latvia on Tuesday.
We believe that recognizing a Palestinian state at this moment would not truly facilitate a radical solution to the situation in a positive direction. Unfortunately, the current situation makes it difficult to work on a two-state solution. It still needs to be a political goal. We also believe that such a unilateral recognition without a corresponding UN Security Council resolution, without the relevant Security Council's recognition, would not truly facilitate the normalization of the situation, and therefore, Latvia currently does not plan to take such steps.
Right now, the Palestinian people are torn between two entities. One is controlled by the Palestinian Authority and one is by Hamas. And if you ask an average Israeli, does he believe it's feasible to get to a two-state solution, a solution with a peaceful neighbor, like I crossed the border today from Lithuania to Latvia easily? The answer will be no, because following October 7th, it was a wake-up call for many Israelis.
Today marks the final day in office for Polish President Andrzej Duda, bringing to a close a decade-long presidency. Elected twice under the Law and Justice Party, Duda will deliver a farewell address to the nation tonight at 8 p.m. CET, reflecting on his 10 years as head of state. And right now, Duda is holding a ceremony in the presidential palace, as you can see, and bidding farewell to the Polish armed forces, over which he served as supreme commander. On Polish President Andrzej Duda's last day in office, his wife and the First Lady, Agata Kornhauser-Duda, decided to speak to the outgoing president's cabinet. She described herself as the happiest person on the president's staff to conclude her service.
A teacher and a First Lady. Agata Kornhauser-Duda, wife to President Andrzej Duda, has seldom spoken out during the 10 years of her husband's tenure as President of Poland. That, however, changed on the last day of Andrzej Duda's tenure.
One thing ends, another begins. I think I'm the happiest person in this cabinet. I say farewell to you all with the lyrics of one of my favorite songs. This is the end, nothing remains. We are free, we can leave.
The lyrics, part of a song by popular Polish rock band Elektryczne Gitary, has become the signature chant of school students at the tail end of the school year as they leave their classrooms for summer vacation, prompting some to believe that Agata Kornhauser-Duda is in need of a long vacation away from politics.
And that's all in this edition of World News. Thank you for watching. Bottom Line with Mary Katuk is coming up next.